Good evening and welcome to ITV News. This is Monday night's calendar.
Yes, hello, good evening. Here are tonight's main stories.
I'll never give up on her. 15 years after Claudia Lawrence disappeared in York, her mother still holds out hope for the answers she desperately needs.
Continually, there are people coming forward still with information. It's never stopped. And I'm so grateful for all the help.
Where the heart is, we're in Whitby to see if new rules governing holiday homes will stop locals being forced out of their own community.
My brother's Whitby born and bred, had to move to Gisborough, couldn't afford to be on the housing market here. My youngest son, 31, can't get on the housing market. Any new housing estate, they're being bought up as second homes, holiday lets.
Moment of madness. This Mason Holgate horror challenge pushes Sheffield United towards another heavy loss and a step closer to relegation.
And Saxophone, we'll hear from the retired Leeds music teacher who put on this impromptu gig on a train bound for Harrogate. Thanks very much for joining us. First tonight, the mother of a woman who's been missing, presumed murdered, for 15 years has appealed for help in solving the mystery which has left her life in limbo.
Claudia Lawrence, who's from York, hasn't been seen since she walked home from her job as a chef at the city's university in March 2009. Her mother says she will never give up trying to find out what happened to her daughter.
Joan Lawrence told our reporter Katie Oscroft that the lack of concrete information has taken its toll.
15 years, it's a life sentence. It feels like a life sentence. And it just goes on and on and on. It's like being in limbo. There's so much out there for people who have a bereavement, but not for people who don't know.
Joan Lawrence's daughter was 35 when she went missing. Claudia was captured on CCTV as she came home from her shift as a chef at York University.
It's been 15 years and your little girl would have been 50.
And I've got to say she will be 50 because I don't know. All her friends are 50. The ones she went to school with, the ones in the class, the one that lived next door, that they were like that. You can't celebrate, you can't buy a present, you can't have a card, but there's also no grave, so you can't take flowers.
There have been new leads, false hope, extensive searches, but none of them have led to Claudia.
You've missed so many milestones, haven't you?
Yeah. People have died, people have moved on.
My name's Peter Lawrence. I'm very concerned about my daughter.
Fine, and what's your daughter's name?
Claudia.
Claudia was reported missing by Peter Lawrence, Joan's former husband. He made appeals and watched a huge investigation unfold, but he died in 2021, not knowing where his daughter was.
Can you put into words why it's important for you to know exactly what happened to Claudia?
Because I'm a mum, and because I want justice, and I want answers.
Those answers have not emerged from Claudia's home in York.
No one has lived in this house since Claudia disappeared. Joan Lawrence wants to use it for the good of the community around this area, in memory of the daughter she hasn't seen for 15 years.
If it could be some sort of hub, it could serve different purposes.
Would that help you to think that something of Claudia's was doing good?
I want some good to come out of this, no matter what.
Meanwhile, Joan is preparing for another milestone without her daughter, hoping it will be the last.
I must never give up. And there are days when I really think I should, but I won't give up. I can't give up. Continually, there are people coming forward still with information. It's never stopped. And I'm so grateful for all the help.
The unimaginable pain of Joan Lawrence, still looking for answers about what happened to Claudia. Well, Katie joins us now. And Katie, have there been any breakthroughs in this case over the years?
Yes, Sally, but they've come to nothing. Now, Joan Lawrence has been very critical of the police and she says that she feels she's driving this inquiry now. But the case has been described by North Yorkshire Police as the largest and most complex missing persons inquiry in the force's history. There have been 2 separate investigations, a case review, 9 arrests, although no charges yet. And just 3 years ago, so when Claudia had been missing for 12 years, there was an extensive search of a beauty spot 6 miles from Claudia's home in York, but it came to nothing.
So, Katie, are the police still looking?
Well, Ian, today North Yorkshire Police wouldn't comment to us about the status of this investigation, but in recent years they have said it's at a reactive phase. In other words, they will investigate new information.
Interesting. Thanks very much indeed, Katie. Thank you. Next tonight, kicked out of our own communities. That's the stark language being used in some of our region's tourist towns, where high-priced holiday homes are forcing out families who've lived there for generations.
Today, after years of campaigning on the issue, the government finally offered a new solution to ease the problem. But will it be enough?
In a moment, we'll get the details from Westminster. But first, Greggy Steele has been looking at the situation in Whitby.
Whitby, a picture-perfect tourist town, but which also has an image as a place where local people struggle to set up homes of their own. Just ask this artist who says around half the houses in his street are holiday homes.
This is what's happening to Whitby. Everything that turns up is a second home or a holiday let. I lived in St Ives in Cornwall and that went exactly the same way, and I can see it going here the same way. They're taking the parking, the noise and this, that and the other, and all the buildings are empty.
On another street corner, we meet Shelley, who says her family's literally being broken apart by the struggle to set up home here.
My brother's Whitby born and bred, had to move to Gisborough, couldn't afford to be on the housing market here. My youngest son, 31, can't get on the housing market. He's had to move to Leicester for work and housing. Any new housing estate, they're being bought up as second homes, holiday lets, even on the council housing estates now, properties are being bought up. And holiday lets are even on the council housing estates.
What's that doing to the town, would you say?
Our generations, we're losing that history.
This is a tourist town then, sending its own message to the top. Send help. Almost 500 miles away in Cornwall today, Michael Gove sent a message back, saying his government gets it.
We know that short-term lets can be helpful for the tourist economy, but we also know there needs to be an element of control so that local people can also rent those homes as well.
And the Secretary of State insists he's offering deeds as well as words as he unveiled a package of measures designed to make it easier for long-term locals to get their hands on a home. The measures include making future short-term lets require planning permission. They'll also be required to sign a mandatory national register, moves which together it's hoped will give communities greater control of the amount of holiday homes.
We're definitely going in the right direction. You're looking at a town now where 20% of the housing stock is taken up by holiday lets and second homes. That has a detrimental effect on young local people trying to get on the ladder, basically, trying to find a home themselves.
The question, of course, is whether all this will be the right mix to keep more people firmly in the picture in their own hometown.
Greg Eastill reporting there from Whitby. Well, our political correspondent Charanpreet Kara joins us now. Charanpreet, will these measures be the right mix? What's the consensus where you are in Westminster?
Well, Sally, the truth is it's still a little early to tell. The main criticism from some who don't think this potential legislation goes far enough is that this will only apply to new short-term lets. So existing ones won't need to go through that process to get planning permission. Earlier today, I spoke to Rachel Maskell, the Labour MP for York Central, and she was disappointed by that.
I think the most disappointing thing is all of those short-term holiday lets we have currently, like over 2,000 in York, they will be passported onto the new planning system, so won't have to make an application for a new form of planning. If you were to then turn those properties back into residential use, you're going to have to go back through the planning system. This is putting additional hurdles in the way to get those properties back into residential use, so needed in communities like York.
You can hear Rachel Maskell's scepticism there, and this is something that she's been campaigning on for years. In Greg's report, Michael Gove promised greater control of this sector, and the thing is, local authorities, he says, will have the power to stop people from using their second homes as short-term lets. But we don't yet know what the criteria to do that will be. The example Rachel Maskell gives is stag and hen do's. In York, she says lots of short-term lets are used for those, causing noise and nuisance for the people who live nearby. She'd like to see antisocial behaviour as one of the criteria that local authorities can use to strike people from the National Register, but we don't know if that'll be the case. And look, there are around 8,000 second homes in Yorkshire, but those that are already being used for short-term lets won't be.
Apologies, we seem to have lost Charanpreet there at Westminster, but we'll bring you more of the day's news in just a moment. But also coming up on calendar tonight, in sport, Leeds United become English football's top informed team as 2 goals against Plymouth secure their 8th win on the bounce. That and the rest of the sport coming up.
And it's been a mild start to the working week, but how long can it last? I'll have all the weather details later on in the programme.
Now to the latest development in Sheffield's long-running tree-felling saga. A consultation started to see if plans to protect the trees should go ahead, with the council wanting to hear from residents.
It's a far cry from the days of mass protests, court action and arrests that made headlines across the world at the height of the scandal. Martin Fisher has the story.
Scenes like this became an all-too-familiar sight in the normally quiet suburbs of Sheffield a decade ago. Protesters angry at Sheffield Council's decision to cut down hundreds of healthy trees.
Waking up at like 4 in the morning to go out on some night patrol, and it was just so dysfunctional, and thinking other people are leading normal lives. They're getting up, they're taking their kids to school. I'm wondering whether I'm going to be arrested by the end of the day. And try and make some sense of it, try and just make this horrible thing worthwhile.
But it's now 6 years since the last tree was felled. The council has apologised and now wants to hear from the public over how best to preserve the street trees.
This is the new world. We obviously had the trees dispute. We had the Lowcock inquiry, which said, the council was wrong in what it did, and this new process is what, and it's partly what Mark Lowcock said we should do, is work with the campaigners, work with environment groups and with other stakeholders.
Initially 3 roads are being looked at, but this will increase as the consultation continues. Now you can see this mature tree's roots bursting through the pavement here, so the idea is to extend the pavement outwards to allow the tree's roots to grow and spread further. But of course that will have a knock-on effect. It means parking will be diminished, and that could be a problem for residents. The twists and turns of the Sheffield tree saga, never easy to unravel. And for some residents, the loss of parking spaces could have a big impact.
It's actually taken out all the 2-hour car parking spaces that we actually successfully petitioned to keep. Used by sheltered housing, people who visit, the nurses, visitors to the sheltered housing, the tennis club, the shops around the corner, which is only half an hour parking.
So while no longer being cut down, how best to save Sheffield's trees? Still dividing opinion. Martin Fisher, ITV News.
Yes, it's the story that won't go away. And another story that won't go away, Brexit. Yorkshire farmers are warning that a post-Brexit policy which changes the way they're paid could reduce food production and even put them out of business. They say the scheme, which pays farmers for environmental work rather than the area of land farmed, isn't fit for purpose.
Well, it comes as farmers from our region are preparing for the start of the National Farming Union Conference tomorrow, which will focus on the future of British farming. Catherine Walker reports.
Leaving the EU was England's chance to drive forward its own farming policy. But 4 years later, and hill farmers like Peter in Todmorden say they're feeling the pinch.
So in terms of this farm, Brexit has brought up many uncertainties and many challenges. Economically speaking, like many other hill farms within the region, certainly we're feeling the pinch there with declining subsidy payments.
Before the referendum, farmers received subsidies from the EU based on how many acres they managed. Now, under the government's new post-Brexit plan, they're rewarded for how well they look after the land and promote biodiversity. Under the new scheme, grants, known as sustainable farming incentives, include things like money for maintaining hedges, incentives to cut back on insecticides, and payments to provide habitats for birds and bees or improve the health of soil. But in North Yorkshire, Rebecca says the new scheme doesn't make it as cost-effective to produce food. So do you think anything good came out of Brexit then?
I mean, the situation is very bad. Our conversations around our kitchen table are very rarely positive at the moment. The post-Brexit payment schemes simply don't feel fit for purpose and are lacking certainty. So I think the future is a really worrying time. We want to be able to farm, produce food and look after the environment. But ultimately, it's very hard to pursue some of these when the financial situation is so tricky and so uncertain.
What we're hoping, and the premise of the scheme, is that basically our soils and our system becomes more resilient to the changing weather pattern. But we're on the start of a journey. I do think it's a work in progress, and we go from there. And I think we do have to appreciate that food, from a UK point of view, UK produced, is very important.
But the government says caring for the countryside will increase food production.
There are two sides of the same coin, so improving your soil quality actually is good for the environment, but it also increases your productivity. The primary purpose of farmers is to produce food. We want to help them on that journey to continue to produce food, but we've got to try and do that in a way which also benefits the environment and increases our biodiversity.
Remainers and Leavers alike knew that Brexit would change the landscape of English farming. But at the moment, those working the land still need convincing that the next generation will benefit from this new plan. Catherine Walker, ITV News.
Well, the ITV Evening News continues at 6:30. Here's a look at what's happening with Mary Nightingale.
Coming up on the Evening News, we will have the latest from Bristol, where police confirm a baby was among 3 young children found dead in a house yesterday. The widow of the Russian opposition leader, Alexei Navalny, claims her husband was killed using Novichok. Here, are they a distraction for children? The government plans a crackdown on phones in schools. And after his life-changing surgery, a special day out for the boy who beat the odds. Do join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
We will, Mary. We'll be watching you on our big telly because are you sitting comfortably? An important question, a genuine question, and one that our next report might make you think about.
If you find you sometimes have aches in your neck and back, the way you're sitting right now could be one of the reasons. Yes, experts say too many of us have our TVs too high on the wall compared to our sofas.
So is your TV in the right place? Do you need to think about moving it? James Webster has been investigating.
Time to relax on the sofa for Sue from Rotherham, who's looking after her grandson. But she's been worried for some time that having her TV above her fireplace might not be the best place.
When it was first put up, I felt it was far too high to be able to sit and watch at any length of time comfortably, and you could feel the strain on your neck. And the difficulty, I think, with television is that it's so easy to not realise how time has passed. You become immersed in a programme, suddenly you've been there for an hour, and it does cause shoulder pain, neck pain.
On average, we spend more than 2.5 hours a day watching TV, which experts warn is a long time if the screen is at the wrong height. Too high on the wall and you'll need to tilt your neck upwards to watch. They recommend mounting it at eye level when you're sitting down, but the exact measurement of where that is depends on how big your screen is, how high your sofa is, and how far apart the two are.
At this chiropractor's in Dinnington, they take photos and measurements to diagnose and treat pain. And they say too much time watching TV in an awkward position can start to cause problems.
We shouldn't be experiencing pain in day-to-day life. And if we are doing that, that's a strong indicator that the body is getting to a point where it's had enough and something needs to be done about it. It could be things like inflammation, not just in one joint, but it could be globally. It could also be that we start seeing a reduction in movement or general fatigue or headaches if things come to worse.
That's why they recommend people thinking both about where their TV is and where they sit to watch it.
There's no point having something that's so high that when we are sat, our head goes into tilt and we create contraction or compression of the tissues behind. And if it's too low, yet again, the same thing will be indicated. And try and get everything so your eyes are aligned to midway or 2/3 up the bottom of the monitor.
TVs in our homes are bigger than ever and they're often wall-mounted. These trends are unlikely to change, but experts do hope more of us will consider matching the height of the screens more closely with where we sit to watch them. James Webster, ITV News, Rotherham.
Certainly something to think about.
Yes, now we know, don't we?
Time for some sport now, and a weekend of highs and lows for our region's teams.
Zero Accounting Software sponsors ITV Regional Sports Report.
In better news, Leeds United look unstoppable at the moment. They made it 8 straight wins in the Championship with a 2-0 victory at Plymouth. Second in the table now, and with top of the league Leicester coming to Ellen Road on Friday night, the chance to close the gap even further. At the other end of the Championship table, Sheffield Wednesday are showing real spirit in their fight for survival. A 2-0 win at Millwall means they've closed the gap to safety to just 4 points. Let's take a look at the region's other weekend winners now, and Barnsley are 4th in League One after a 2-1 win at Fleetwood. It's now 3 straight wins for Bradford City in League Two after Callum Kavanagh's goal saw off Sutton, and Doncaster went goal crazy at Grimsby, winning 5-1 to ease any possible relegation fears. Leeds Rhinos netball team couldn't emulate their rugby league equivalents, losing the opening game of their Super League campaign to the Seven Stars, but it was double delight for the Sheffield Steelers, who won both their Elite League ice hockey games over the weekend. It was 6-4 against Nottingham at the Arena on Saturday and 4-2 at Guildford last night. And just before I go, congratulations to Sheffield swimmer Max Litchfield, who won silver at the World Aquatics Championships in Doha. That's Max's first ever World Championship medal. So good luck to him.
Brilliant, isn't it?
Well done.
Fantastic.
Very comprehensive there, Chris. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Well, finally, if you've ever been on the last train out of Leeds on a Saturday night, you've probably experienced the odd raucous stag or hen do, but maybe not an impromptu saxophone performance. Retired music teacher Brendan Duffy was convinced by passengers to play them a tune, and he even ended up missing his own stop to keep the party going. The videos, including these from Emma Starr and Diane Pilkington, have gone viral, and Brendan's had an outpouring of love from former students.
I said, oh please, just play one tune, because, you know, it was so happy. So I said, well, I've got to get off at the next stop. And they said, it's fine, play one tune. And everyone's like singing along and dancing and going crazy. And, you know, they're shouting for more. Of course, that was my station I'd gone past.
Of all the reasons to miss his stop.
I know. He's going to be, well, he is an internet sensation, isn't he?
He is, absolutely he is.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Catch him on a train near you. Let's get the weather forecast now. Here's Joe with the details.
Good visibility on the horizon. TUI sponsors ITV Yorkshire Weather.
Thank you. Very good evening to you. I hope your week started well. The weather's certainly been kind. It is going to turn more unsettled over the next few days, with some rain during the middle part of the week, windy conditions as well, squally showers after that, and a colder feel to our weather by this weekend. Now, high pressure's given us this quiet start, but during tomorrow evening, rain will move in across most places. It's wet and windy on Wednesday, and those squally showers pack in for Thursday behind it. Friday looking a little clearer and drier, and certainly a touch colder into this weekend. Now back to this evening's details. No real danger of any frost at all. Very mild conditions today, and into tonight perhaps some patchy showery rain for North Yorkshire. But for the most part, a dry night to come, with after midnight a few fog patches for the Dales and the Pennines, and winds swinging round to a southerly by tomorrow morning. 6 or 7 Celsius the overnight low. As we go into tomorrow, it should be dry for most of us. And those are the sun times, up just after 7:15 and setting at 5:25 tomorrow evening. For tomorrow then, a dry start to the day. Any low cloud, mistiness and fog will gradually lift, revealing bright or sunny spells through tomorrow morning, but then cloud begins to build from the west. So after lunchtime, rain beginning to knock on the door of the Pennines, the Dales, certainly the Peak District, and that will work its way eastwards by the end of the day tomorrow, becoming quite breezy but still mild. And looking ahead to the next few days, unsettled conditions. That rain will move its way through. However, during Wednesday, a spell of wet and windy weather will move across the whole of the country. It's staying mild for the time being.
TUI sponsors ITV Yorkshire Weather.
I think it's what they call a false spring. We're being lulled into a false sense of security. It's mild at the moment, but there's some cold weather still to come, isn't there?
Yeah, there certainly is. Nothing worse, is it? Now, that's all for now. I'll be back after news at 10. For now, though, from Sally and me, have a good evening.
Bye-bye.
Good night.